Recording.
So, hi folks, it's Dave from 12 Hats Media Lab here, and today I've got a very special guest. I've got Mary Todd from G'day Podcast. And Mary, just tell us about your show.
Sure, it's just launched. I've only got 4 episodes out and it's been a bit of a work in progress, but G'day Podcasts is conversations with Australians and New Zealanders. And the idea of it was born while I was travelling around Scotland, actually, with my son, listening to lots of podcasts mostly from the Northern Hemisphere. And we found that whenever they referred to Australia or New Zealand, it was very generic. They'd always say those folk from down under were great people and they were beautiful countries, which is good. That's what we want to hear. But in general, Australia was Crocodile Dundee, sharks, kangaroos and koala bears. And New Zealand was always the haka, the All Blacks and sheep.
Yeah.
Really, they didn't seem to know that much about us. And I just thought, well, wouldn't it be lovely just to get ordinary humans with a story to tell and put out an ongoing series from Australia and New Zealand? That is the basis of G'day Podcasts.
Fantastic. And how's it going so far?
Great. I've got, took me a long time to get going. I had a lot of life challenges that kept stalling me, but I kind of finally got it together recently and put 4 episodes out as a sort of a launch. And I work full time, so I'm kind of thinking at the moment once a month. Now that I've started, I've realised that's too infrequent.
Yeah.
I think maybe fortnightly. So I've got some good people lined up and I need to start recording again.
It's a perfect time to do it.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? It is the perfect time to do it. So I will be getting quite busy over the next week or so.
Yeah, so the reason I got you here, because I think now is the time to entertain the troops. And I think we need to have a big discussion and we need to rediscover our sense of humour. So I really want to talk about the Australian and the Kiwi sense of humour in times of crisis. And we had a little interesting discussion before we start. So what's your feelings about this?
As a Kiwi who lives in Australia, I do think there's quite a definite difference between Australian humour and New Zealand humour. I think Australians are very good at laughing at themselves, and a lot of their novels, movies, etc., have this self-effacing kind of humour that runs through it. Whereas New Zealand's humour is more, some of it's quite dark. If you look at Peter Jackson's early movies or Take Away, there's quite often a dark theme running through it. But I think the New Zealand do-it-yourself number 8 wire theme also runs through our humour. And also New Zealand's very influenced by our Pacific neighbours.
Okay.
So we have the likes of Billy T. James. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's since passed away, but he was a very popular humorist in New Zealand through the 70s and 80s. Now, his humour is so un-PC in today's world, but he just totally mocked our Indigenous culture.
Interesting. Yeah, so I like to think that, well, as you said, Australians have a very self-depreciating sense of humour. And I think this is a throwback to our convict days, because I think calling someone a flog usually means that there's the guard with the whip. And I think it's a whole notion of being a yobbo or a larrikin and of being a wowser. I think it's almost like a pseudo class battle between those who just want, have a laugh and just take themselves seriously, and those who want to take things seriously. And I think it's always been ingrained in us.
Yeah, right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So the words larrikin, wowser, and flogging, they have history from Australian heritage, don't they?
They do, yes.
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly the same. I mean, we have also that respect for the enemy, because sometimes if we're getting flogged at our mate's nigger, they'll probably end up getting flogged alongside us. It's just the way things were in the 19th century. It's just And we'll just, I think the whole Australia experiment was just a laugh because we were sent on the other side of the world in a hot desert island with nothing but venomous animals, things that can kill you.
And from a cold climate too.
From a cold climate, yeah.
Mm.
It's really bizarre. But I think it's a good.
Must have been really traumatic.
It must be
Really, when you think about it, you know, how hot it is here at summertime compared to, say, the English Christmas tradition.
Yeah.
And so on. There'd just be so many things. You'd have to develop a sense of humour, wouldn't you?
You'd have to. It's a way to cope. And I think it's an important lesson right now is that we need to find our sense of humour again. I think we need to laugh at ourselves a lot more. And I think the Aussie larrikin isn't dead. I think the Aussie larrikin's coming back. And just by looking at what my friends have been sharing on Facebook, I've just seen a lot more memes this year, like having a laugh at ourselves, especially when like the toilet paper's running low.
Yes.
Man, we've got
I like the one with the dog going, "Is that you, Rona?"
Yeah, I have.
But, yeah, I like that one.
In Perth, we've got the statue on the Swan, and so this lady going like that for a dive.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and again, someone puts a like Eagles jumper, a Dockers jumper, or something on top, just for a prank.
Yes.
This month, someone swam out to her because it's the middle of the river, put a placard over it, and put 2 toilet rolls on it, and the placard said, "The last 2 toilet rolls in town."
That would have taken a bit of doing.
That does, yeah. And Perth, we got this social media site called Bell Tower Times, and it just takes the piss out of everything. I mean, we've got this bridge called the Bayswater Bridge, which is 3.8 metres, and every truck driver in Perth seems to keep crashing into it. It's taken a whole life of its own. It's actually, and now the government's trying to rip it down, and we're up in arms.
Right.
Yeah.
If you think about Australia, because it's such a big continent, there's probably quite distinct humours within each state too, because each state's quite different.
Yeah. Well, I also lived in the Northern Territory, and we got the NT News.
Right.
I think it's the best paper in the country, personally, because who else is going to report about a German backpacker stuck in a Crockfield billabong while being chased by a UFO?
Yeah, that is pretty unique, and that would only come from the Northern Territories.
Yeah. Or having laughed about, because Northern Territory is the only place in Australia where you can buy fireworks legally these days on July 1st. And you just see the answer leading into July 1st about people letting off last year's fireworks to scare the dogs. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of examples of Queensland humour. I think one that really pokes at Queensland is... I guess Queensland has that slight image of being a bit redneck.
Yeah.
And the daylight saving, because Queensland does not have daylight saving, as I don't think Perth has it either.
We don't know.
Or WA, but there's always the controversy over daylight saving and the frequent jibes at the farming community because they don't want daylight saving because their curtains might fade or...
Exactly
that kind of thing. And that always comes up every year when people switch over to daylight saving.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a Queensland comment.
Actually, I remember after the floods in Brisbane in 2011, I remember someone outside of Lang Park put a snorkel and goggles on top of the statue of Wally Lewis. I think.
That's good. I had just arrived in Brisbane a few months before those floods, and coming from the South Island of New Zealand where it's quite crisp and fresh and the air is quite dry, and then we arrived here in sort of November and we had like a couple of weeks of fine weather, and then it started to rain and it just got more and more humid and everything was wet and everything in the house smelled, and I was just like, what have we done? It's not what I thought Brisbane was going to be like.
Yeah, and I also remember some lady after the floods had passed through our house and said, "Hi, Mum, can you send me more shad whales?"
Yeah. I'm trying to think of Kiwi humour because I've been away for a while now, so it's not popping back into my head as probably as quickly as I'd like for this, but something will pop in probably just after we've finished the interview.
That'd be so typical.
Yeah, that'd be typical.
Yeah.
Definitely. I get one thing I've found quite interesting moving from New Zealand to Australia is how much I get mocked for my accent here in Australia. Now, if you go to anywhere else in the world, they struggle to know the difference between an Australian and a Kiwi accent, much like people trip over Canadian and American accents.
That's right.
But, you know, I work in a corporate environment and there's no way people would mock some of my other colleagues, their accents from many, many parts of the world, but Australians do not hold back on us Kiwis, I tell you. And they just love mimicking me saying six or fish and chips or whatever.
Yeah.
Because apparently I know fish and chips.
Yeah, I think it's shared by both countries that more we mock you, the more we love you.
Yes, apparently.
Yeah.
Except when it comes to sports.
That's exactly right. But no, I'm quite happy calling my mate's dickhead bastard, wanker.
Yeah.
It's in terms of endearment. I mean, I draw the line at the C word, but everything else.
Yeah. But going back to the word dick, or as we call our verandas, we call them decks.
Okay.
And people will mock me about that too. They'll go, "Have you got a deck?" And then they wait for me to talk about my dick. They find that very funny.
Yeah. Actually, I had to put on a Kiwi accent when I was over in England in 2005 when we were losing the Ashes. Because I was working behind the bar and I got shit thrown at me big time.
Because of your Australian accent?
Or because the Australians were losing the Ashes to the English,
right.
and the English all of a sudden were all basically full of cricket fans. I mean, when I right there in 2004, that no one cared about cricket. And because they hadn't won in 20 years, and all of a sudden they just, so I had to put on a bit of a Kiwi accent.
So it's because you didn't want to be known. You didn't want to be mocked anymore for being a losing cricket team. Are you a cricket follower?
I'm a cricket nut.
So is my husband. He actually umpires it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's with Queensland Cricket.
Yeah.
Umpiring. Loves it.
Yeah. I grew up in a cricket mad household. Even my mum played for the state. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. It's always, I think just cricket's just part of my life. I remember growing up, I grew up in a small town about 3 hours south of Perth, and we had our cricket pitch was the driver, which also was gravel. So, and Shane Warne was called my hero. So I started throwing leg tweaks onto the pebbles. I had one stitchily placed on the edge of the pitch, and with no doubt it went straight into the bales of my brother every time.
Yeah. So I know in New Zealand it's very common to play backyard cricket.
Yeah.
Especially like on Christmas Day. That's pretty common here too, isn't it, in Australia?
Oh yeah. The old backyard test match.
We even had a bit of a turn this last Christmas. I was woeful, but I gave it a go.
I remember back in school we were even playing cricket indoors in the science lab because I had an aisle between the two between the desks. It was perfect. And it was a rainy day. It was in form, and we just put the bin out and just got the teacher's nail ruler and we just hit screwed up bits of paper all the time.
Paper.
Yeah.
Fun. That would have been fun. Yeah, it would have been resourceful. So do you have a favourite Australian comedy movie, for example?
Yes, The Castle probably sums up the Australian sense of humour perfectly.
Yeah, it does.
It does. And look, my background, if my listeners might be aware, but I did study archetypal behaviour. Daryl Kerrigan is the archetypal fool, and the underdog, and it's just it's so relatable. I think we have got uncles like that, and family. We all know a battler family like that goes through it, and it's just, I mean, like his son goes through the paper and looks for jousting sticks, and how much he wants for it, $100. Oh, tell him he's dreaming. That's just Oh, even my
dreaming.
Even my old man, right? If it's calm outside, he'll give it the scale on how many body dunes it is.
Yes.
And we just sit outside and we go, how's the serenity?
The serenity. Oh, the serenity.
It's the most...
Such a good movie.
Yeah. Another thing I like about the Australian sense of humour is during the Sydney Olympics. We had Roy and HG, and the Dream came on every day, and had Fatso the fat ass wombat. Because they didn't really like the mascots, Sid, Billy and Ollie. And so and he, like, the joke was he was the battler's prince. So every time someone's struggling, he came on, but every time someone was getting too big for their boots, he'll walk onto the screen in animated form and do a little bit of poo on it and walks back off.
Oh, right.
And they had
I know that one.
And they had the diving competition, so they had all their mascots. So they threw all the stuffed toys of the official mascots off. They just went plop and just floated. Then they've got Fatso, and I must have put a brick or something in it, so they threw him off, did a huge bomby, and they awarded him 10.
Oh, that's gold.
That
is good. That is good.
And we remember back then we were all cheering on for Eric the Eel. Like they had him in the replay, and they had the line that said the Equatorial Guinea national record, and they just put it behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think after that, Eric the Eel became just a cult hero. I think he was like every Aussie's favourite African swimmer after that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, I think my favourite New Zealand movie that's a comedy would have to be Goodbye Pork Pie.
Okay.
It's old. Like there was the original one was filmed in the late 70s, and they made a remake just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And that's kind of taking an awful situation. It's a kind of a marriage breakup, and the guy decides to take his kid with him, and he travels from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South Island in a mini, and there's lots of car chases, and it's fun.
Yeah,
it's good, very famous New Zealand movie. You'll have to watch it.
I'll have to look out for it. Yeah,
you have to watch out. You'll have to watch the old version and the new version, because you should.
What I was trying to think of, the Wild Creatures. I can't remember what it was. It's one that came out a couple of years ago. It sounded like
with the little boy.
Little boy.
Yes, that's a great movie
with
Sam Neill.
Sam Neill.
Yeah, and the little boy's Julian. Can't remember his name. That's a very good comedy, and once again, it's got that slight darkness to it for the whole tragedy of why this event has happened.
Yeah,
but it's so funny, and that to me is the epitome of Kiwi humour. And I see a little bit of our Indigenous culture humour weaving through the story.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look up that movie.
Yeah.
You should know it. Hunt for the Wilder People.
Hunt for the Wilder People. That's the one.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Such a good movie.
I'm trying to think of another.
It's only been out for a few years.
I'm trying to think of another. Well, actually, I think I was grown up. I mean, I was born in the 80s. I think that's the 70s and 80s, I think, in both countries were the coming of age. And I think we'd grown up in a golden age where our national identity was coming out.
Definitely. It was
And
maturing.
it was maturing. We were no longer seen as an off card of Britain. We were seen as, we were getting confidence in ourselves. And I just remember growing up, all the Aussie male role models to me were these beefy, blokey types that drank beer, had a smoke, watched the footy.
All those tiny wee shorts.
Yeah. And I was speaking a very broad accent. Yeah, very. Almost Steve Irwin-like, but
yes,
that ocker was very strong. The ocker, he was very strong.
Crocodile Dundee, that's quite ocker.
That's very ocker. When I lived in, as I said, I lived up north. I also lived in Broome. My local pub in Broome was next to a croc farm, so I had always tell always had a laugh with my mates overseas, saying, "Like, this is true Crocodile Dundee country, because jump the fence in the pub, you might end up in a croc's lunch."
Yeah, true story.
Actually, true story. Actually, a guy, it was a bit of a drongo. Drongo is another good Aussie word.
Yes, it is.
I'll explain the origins to it. He climbed a fence one night. That was in July because it was quite cool, and he went into a croc pen, and the croc just bit him. He jumped back over the fence, walked into the pub, bleeding everywhere. But the best thing is, because he got arrested for trespassing, he was marched in front of the local magistrate, and the magistrate said, essentially, "This town's not big enough for both of us. Why don't you leave?" Yeah. And we all had a laugh, saying, if he jumped over the fence in the wet season when the crocs were quite active, he wouldn't be there. But he was in the dry season when the nights were cool and that croc was bit today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the early comedians in New Zealand who I was really influenced by, because he was very prolific in the 70s and 80s, was John Clark, who actually moved to Australia.
I love John Clark.
Yeah, he's since passed away, but he had a character called Fred Dagg.
Yeah.
So he always wore the classic New Zealand black singlet, and he wore gumboots. And he was a very good satirist, and his thing was taking the piss out of the post-pioneering kind of Kiwi bloke.
Yeah.
Blokesses, as he used to refer to women. And he was really funny. Very clever. Very, very
clever man, yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Fred Dagg was surrounded by everyone on a farm named Trevor? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. He was so good.
Yeah.
You can find him on YouTube.
Yeah, because he had a big career over here too. That's probably another.
Yes, he did.
It's probably another big joke between our two countries, that we seem to be nicking all your talented people.
We're always competitive about what we've stolen from each other.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to go into the pavlova, but
no, we don't want to have an argument. Come on.
No, because that's more of a chicken and egg type scenario. But
yes, pretty much.
But personally, I'm not a big pavlova fan. But on behalf of Australia, you can have it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I might have it at Christmas, but that would be about it.
Yeah. What else? I mean, even we've got Fallout, we've got the Finn brothers, we've got so many.
Yes. Who flew first?
Who flew first? Yeah.
That's quite a big one.
Yeah. See, John Clark also, in the lead up to Sydney, had this show called The Games. I don't know, it was over in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it was on every night, and it was just a satire of the whole Olympic committee. And I think that's also quite the Australasian sense of humour, I think, is just not taking ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really some very good female comedians coming out of New Zealand too, as there are in Australia, which is good. It's becoming quite much stronger, I think. The gender balance is getting better as far as stand-up comedy goes across both countries, probably worldwide. You'd hope so anyway, wouldn't you?
And I also think in Australia too, we're getting a lot more ethnic, the last 10 or so years, we've got a lot more ethnic comedians.
Yes.
So we get...
Well, I think Australia has such complex ethnicity anyway.
Often since day one.
Yeah.
It wasn't just British on those ships. There were freed slaves from Jamaica. There were Canadian and American rebels as well. There were
Greeks, Italian,
Jews. There was a whole mixed bag of people getting sent out here. It wasn't just white Anglo-Celtic
That's right.
people. Yeah, so I think there's a good... one of my favourite stories from the early days. There was this character in Sydney named Billy Blue. He was a freed slave from Jamaica who was set out as a convict, and he ran a ferry across the Sydney harbour. But he always seemed to share a laugh so much. He was such a likeable fella. He got caught for a capital offence, but the judge let him off because of who he was.
Because he was so funny.
He was so funny and entertaining, and he felt that it was a disservice to the colony if he was hung. So he was left off the hook, and he just kept going.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great story.
Yeah.
There's a New Zealand comedian called Jeanette McDonald. She's been around for a long time, and she had this great alter ego called Lynn of Tawa, and she was just so Kiwi, and she'd go, "Yous guys," very funny. That's kind of part of my growing up too, is Lynn of Tawa. Because Tawa is like a suburb of Wellington that was a little bit lower socio-economic days.
Yeah.
And I guess she was the female version of a bogan. Yeah, so that was very funny.
Yeah.
She's been around for years, very well known performer in New Zealand still.
Yeah. So you're familiar
with... What about that TV series, Upper Middle Bogan? That's a brilliant...
That is brilliant, yeah.
Australian TV series. It's so very, very funny and totally mocks Australians.
Yeah, that's another example then. Also, like Kath and Kim was a big success because...
Oh, Kath and Kim. It's just so funny.
And it's so real because we all got people out in the suburbs just like that. And it's just...
Yeah, definitely. And the woman who plays in that one, she's a New Zealand actress, and she was actually in an equivalent show in New Zealand. I can't remember the name of it, but it was called Westies or something like that.
Okay.
If you're a Westie, the term Westies comes from living out west in Auckland, which was at one stage a bit of a... Well, we call them Westies instead of Bogans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Bogan has a similar origin. It first appeared in a surfing magazine about 1985. Because out in the west of New South Wales is a Bogan River. And they had a joke in this surfing magazine that all these people from the western suburbs who were coming into the beach and invading their surfy space. So they're saying, these guys are so westy, they must be from Bogan. And the name stuck ever since. We've been putting up with Bogans ever since about 1985. And also we had this show in Australia called The Comedy Company. This is one of my earliest TV memories. And we had this character called Kylie Bowl.
Oh.
She was in school uniform and she had chewing gum.
Yes.
And he said, "Oh my God, man, they showed Bogan."
Kylie is actually an Australian name, and it comes from an Indigenous word, I believe.
It does. It's actually from Western Australia, truth be known. It's from the Noongar language, meaning boomerang. I'm led to believe.
Yes, and also the guy Chris, who does all those caricatures more recently. What's his name? Chris Pine? No, Chris.
Chris.
You know him.
Yeah, I know him.
And he plays the schoolgirl and That's pretty funny too.
Yeah.
But also, so there's some New Zealand comedians I really like and be interested to hear your point of view being Australian is Flight of the Conchords.
I like them so much.
Yes, they're so good, aren't they?
Yeah. I love how the fact that also the Australians were the antagonists in that whole series.
Consistently.
Consistently, like every time they went back to what's his name? Murray.
Yes, Murray, who's
Murray.
just so funny.
Yeah. And the first thing they ever met at the Australians said, "Did they mock your accent?" Yeah, that
Yeah.
I really like.
Interesting how that was so big in the USA and other parts of the world, because
Yeah.
that is one comedy that has really done well overseas.
Actually, I recommend another podcast too. It's by Reese Darby. He's got one out on
Oh,
Spotify now at the moment
well,
called.
he's Murray, isn't he? He's Murray in Flight of the
Yeah,
Conchords.
exactly right.
Yeah.
There's one called Aliens with Us, and I think you'll
Ah,
appreciate it a lot more because actually you appreciate it quite a lot because it's got that Kiwi sense of humour, but it's also talking about UFOs and
yeah.
conspiracy theories. Yeah, it's only come out the last few weeks. Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, well, definitely. I like him. He's funny. He's funny, and he's the epitome of Kiwi
Yeah.
in the way he talks, I think.
So I think
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, there was a story about a New Zealand surfer who punched the shark, but before he said punch the shark, he said, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
And Adam Hills caught on to this on the last leg over in the UK, and so that's so Kiwi sense of humour. Because if it was Australian, he'll just punch the shark.
Yeah. That's interesting.
We've been more direct.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think Australian culture is a bit more aggressive than New Zealand, and you see it in the sports field where New Zealand still have that little bit of it's good enough to participate, whereas Australia, it's always you got to win.
Yeah,
I see that as a difference in our sporting culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been a byproduct of the last 20 odd years as well. When because we were, it was before I was born, but we had a very embarrassing Olympics. I think it was Montreal 1976, and our government set up the Australian Institute of Sport. And I think ever since then, we've been training our athletes to win. And I think we had that golden period 20 years ago. We had almost every major World Cup we could think of, and had a really good Olympics. And
yes.
And I really want to criticise the Australian media because those days are long gone, but they always put this expectation of Australian to win. And
yes,
we really got to look back at our heritage as underdogs, and we really got to start not taking ourselves so seriously again.
Right.
That's what.
Well, New Zealand, Australia are very capable at most sports.
We can put it down to the climate or our space, but I think it's also very part of our lives. I mean, I grew up in the bush, and whole social life in the country is all revolved around sporting clubs. So I mean, I played Aussie rules football, I played cricket, I played basketball, dabbled in a little bit of squash. I grew up around the golf club. And look, my mum's amazing, and this is another good thing about Australians. We all love to volunteer. With these amazing volunteer women that just appeared and was on every committee known in town, and it's just, I think sport just brings Australia together. I think that's our glue.
Yeah,
Even in
I think that's probably the case in many places too, though.
Yeah.
I've been on a few committees and clubs and stuff based around sports too, I must say.
I'm a sucker for them too. I think I got a tattoo across my forehead.
My husband's mad on sports. I'm not quite as much, but yeah, it's good. I think also we've got off comedy, haven't we? We're talking about sports now.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't matter. I think New Zealand, maybe this could be I'll be careful how I say this. I tend to think New Zealand's a bit more advanced than Australia, just in the current climate of kindness and gender
Oh, yeah.
equality and all that kind of thing. And I'm not saying that as a criticism of Australia. I'm just saying that because New Zealand's a small island, it's a little bit easier to pull people together, whereas Australia's such a vast continent. It's the biggest continent in the world that's one country.
Mm.
However, it is divided into various governments in all these different states. So it's actually just a really tough task
Yeah.
to change a mindset, to change laws, to change
Mm.
political outlooks. It's just a harder challenge. But it's good to see progress has been made.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, well, personally, as an outsider, I think New Zealand's one of the best run countries in the world.
It is at the moment.
Yeah, I
I think
think,
we've probably got the best leader in the world right now.
oh, yeah. I mean,
Jacinda Ardern is amazing.
yeah, and she's doing a great job. And I think we need,
Mm.
all credit where credit's due to ScoMo, but I think he's, the situation is you got to be proactive. And he's trying to be proactive, but I think sometimes it's no good saying you're going to ban everyone from attending events and you want to go see the footy on the weekend. I don't think you got to pull lines here, mate. You got to, or disappearing to Hawaii after half the country's on fire. But
Yeah.
but I think sometimes having a women prime minister is a good thing because they show a bit more compassion and
Possibly.
and
Possibly.
quite they're quite understanding and they tend to listen more. I think guys are a bit more
Mm.
competitive and a lot of I'm not going to go into that whole gender trap.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's
yeah.
possibly true. I mean, Jacinda Ardern is the third female prime minister in
Mm,
New Zealand. So I think in some ways that speaks volumes in itself.
yeah.
But she's followed a path of politics from a very young age. So she's a
Mm,
true believer of the value that politics can offer. Whereas sometimes other leaders may come in and they'll have a slightly different background. They might have a business background or a money background or
mm,
something else. And I think politics is such an unusual passion,
yeah.
but I think she, above anything, is a true believer in the value of politics if it goes well.
Mm,
It's such a contentious topic. Everyone just thinks about their own personal want. I'm
yeah.
not talking about leaders now. I'm talking about just the average person on the street, or Joe Blogs, as we would call them, or
Mm,
everyone does. Yeah, we all just think about our own agenda, and just doesn't. It's just such a tough thing, politics in general.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for coming onto the show.
It's okay. It's been a pleasure to meet you and have a little
Yes,
chat.
yes, exactly right. Just get these things off our chest. I think it's more important. I think as our roles as podcasters, we need to entertain the troops and provide a
Mm.
distraction from the big bad world's going on at the moment.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
no matter if you're Australian or New Zealand, we're all in this together. So just look out for one another.
Yes,
The
we
good time
must.
and the good times will come back. They haven't been cancelled.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good, good final words there, Dave.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. You take care.
You too.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.